when my husband leaned across the courtroom table and said, "I took everything," he smiled like the case was already over. I did not answer him. I could not trust my voice. Damon had already emptied the accounts I knew about, locked me out of the house records, and made me look like a wife who had walked into court with nothing but feelings. His lawyer stacked papers in front of him, like proof. Mine sat beside me with one blue folder and a calm face. Then Judge Helena Cross looked down at the file in her hand and said, "Before I rule on the asset claim, I need to open the sealed record from Arthur Reed." My late father's name hit me harder than Damon's words. Damon's smile disappeared. He pushed back from the table, so fast his chair scraped the floor. "Your Honor, that file has nothing to do with this divorce." The judge did not look up. "Then you should have no reason to be afraid of it." That was the first time I saw fear on Damon's face. The file was not thick. It was old, cream-colored, and tied with a red band. But when the judge opened it, Damon stopped acting like a man who had taken everything. He looked like a man who had forgotten one thing had been saved. And the first page was not a deed. It was not a bank record. It was not even about the house. It was a returned card with my handwriting on it. My chest tightened because I remembered that card. I had written it to my father while he was sick. Damon told me my father had refused to read anything from me. He told me I had waited too long. If you have ever been blamed for something you did not do, or made to feel alone while someone else held the truth, tell me where you are listening from and what time it is there. Stories like this need witnesses everywhere. And if you want to hear how the truth comes out piece by piece, please subscribe when you are ready and stay with me. Because when the judge turned that first card over, I saw 2 words stamped across the back. Unwanted contact. The courtroom went so quiet that I could hear the red band from my father's file slide against the judge's desk. Unwanted contact. Those 2 words did not look real at first. They looked too cold to belong on something I had written with shaking hands beside my kitchen sink. I remembered the card because I had thrown away 3 versions before I finished that one. I had written, "Dad, I know you are angry, but I still love you. Please let me come see you." Damon had told me the card came back unopened. He had stood in our hallway with the envelope in his hand and said, "Mira, he does not want this. You need to stop hurting yourself." Back then, I believed him. Now, that same card was inside my father's sealed file. Judge Cross lifted it carefully, like it was not just paper. My lawyer leaned closer, but I kept my hands flat in my lap. If I moved, I was afraid Damon would see how badly I was shaking. Damon's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, this is personal family material. It has nothing to do with property division." The judge finally looked at Damon. "Mr. Lawson, this card was submitted with an attorney-held estate record. It is marked as part of the communication log." Communication log. My stomach tightened. That meant the card was not there by mistake. Someone had kept track of it. Someone had written down where it came from, when it arrived, and what happened to it after. Damon turned his head just enough to look at me. It was the same look he used at home when he wanted me quiet in front of other people. Not angry, not loud, just warning. Do not make this worse. For years, that look had worked. That day, I did not look away. I reached for the pen beside my legal pad and wrote 2 words under the date. Communication log. It was a small thing. It did not feel brave. But it was the first time in months I wrote something down because I wanted to remember it, not because Damon told me I was forgetting things. Judge Cross turned to the next page. "There are 3 returned items attached to this card," she said, all addressed to Arthur Reed, all marked with similar handling notes. 3. I had only known about 1. My throat burned. I thought about every night I had sat at the edge of our bed, staring at my phone, trying not to call my father because Damon said I had already embarrassed myself enough. I thought silence had been my father's answer. But silence had been handled, labeled, filed. Damon shifted beside his lawyer. I was trying to protect her, he said. She was not in a good place. The judge did not answer him right away. She looked at the card again, then at the file. This record raises a question, she said. Who decided this contact was unwanted? No one spoke. And before anyone could explain that stamp, I had to remember the life where Damon first convinced me my father's silence was love turning its back on me. The judge's question stayed in the air. Who decided this contact was unwanted? I heard it, but my mind had already gone back to our kitchen, 6 months before my father died. Back then, nothing looked like a trap. That was the part that hurt the most. Damon did not start with shouting or threats. He started by making himself useful. He paid bills before I asked. He picked up the mail before I came home. He answered calls when I was in the shower, then told me who it was with a calm voice. If a form came from the bank or from my father's attorney, Damon would slide it across the table and say, "Just sign here. I already checked it." I thought that was marriage. I thought I was lucky to have a husband who knew how to handle the hard things. My father, Arthur Reed, had never trusted Damon fully. He was polite to him, but never warm. When I asked why, Dad would say, "A man who needs to manage every room is usually hiding something in one of them." I used to laugh that off. I thought he was just being protective. Then Dad got sick, and everything changed slowly enough that I did not call it control. Damon started saying the hospital tired my father out. Then he said my father needed peace. Then he said my father had asked for distance because our marriage had taken too much from the family. Every sentence was small. Every sentence sounded almost kind. And every sentence moved me one step farther away. When I wanted to visit, Damon said, "Not today. You will upset him." When I wanted to call, he said, "He is sleeping." When I wanted to send flowers, he said, "Mira, stop trying to buy forgiveness." That word stayed with me. Forgiveness. It made me feel like I had done something wrong, even when I could not name what it was. So I started trying harder at home. I cooked more. I smiled when Damon's friends came over. I stopped asking about bank notices because Damon said I got anxious over things I did not understand. I let him keep folders in the locked cabinet near his desk because he said the documents were too important to lose. Now, sitting in court, I remembered that cabinet. I remembered the little brass key on Damon's ring. I remembered how he always took the mail in with him before he kissed me hello. At the time, it looked like routine. Now, it looked like a wall. Judge Cross was still looking at the card. My lawyer had written something on her pad. Damon kept his eyes forward, but his jaw moved like he was biting down on every word he wanted to say. And I finally understood the first part of the answer. My father's silence had not entered our home by itself. Someone had carried it in, piece by piece, folded inside envelopes, phone excuses, and papers I was too tired to question. But if that was true, then the red flags had started long before the returned card. They had started in the ordinary days, when Damon's help first began to feel like permission. Damon's help had not felt like control at first. That was what made it so hard to accept in court. If he had been cruel from the beginning, maybe I would have seen it. Maybe I would have fought him sooner. But the first red flags had come dressed as care. After my father got sick, Damon started keeping my phone on the charger in the bedroom at night. "You need sleep," he would say. "If the hospital calls, I'll hear it." It sounded kind. Now, I remembered waking up once before sunrise, and seeing him standing by the dresser with my phone in his hand. He told me it had fallen. I believed him, because I wanted to believe the man beside me was protecting me, not deciding which calls I deserved to receive. Then there was the mail. Before Dad's illness, I opened my own letters. Afterward, Damon started sorting them into neat piles on the counter. Bills on the left, junk mail by the trash. Anything from banks, lawyers, or my father's side of town went straight to his office. "I do not want you overwhelmed," he said. But sitting in court with that returned card lying in my father's file, I finally understood something. Overwhelmed had become his word for informed. There were other things too, small things, things I had buried because grief made me tired. My father's attorney, Ruth Bell, had called our house once. I remembered Damon stepping onto the porch to take it. When he came back inside, he said Ruth was only checking estate details and that I did not need to call back. A week later, I found an envelope from Ruth's office in the trash, torn open across the top. Damon said it had been a duplicate notice. I did not ask to see it. That memory made shame crawl up my neck. Not because I had trusted him. A wife should be able to trust her husband. The shame came from realizing how many times my own doubt had tried to save me, and how quickly I had pushed it down. Across the courtroom, Damon still faced forward. His hands were folded now, but his thumb rubbed hard against his wedding ring. That was another red flag I knew too well. He did that whenever he was planning what version of the truth to use next. Judge Cross turned another page in the sealed file. My lawyer's pen moved faster. I leaned just enough to see the edge of the page. There were dates listed there. Not many words, just dates, initials, and short notes. But one date caught my eye because I remembered it clearly. It was the day Damon told me my father was too tired for visitors. The note beside that date said, "Daughter attempted contact." My breath caught. Attempted. Not refused. Not unwanted. Attempted. And suddenly the past did not look like a sad misunderstanding anymore. It looked like a trail. The missed calls, the opened envelopes, the locked cabinet, the phone on the charger, the way Damon always got to the truth before I did. If those notes were real, then Part 4 could not just be about one returned card. It had to become an inventory of every piece of proof Damon thought I would never connect. The note on the page changed the way I looked at everything. Daughter attempted contact. I did not know what the other pages said yet, but I knew one thing. Damon had been counting on me never seeing them together. One card could be explained away. One missed call could be called a mistake. One opened envelope could become a duplicate notice. But a pattern was different. My lawyer slid a clean sheet of paper toward me and whispered, "Write what you recognize, only what you know." So I did. I made my first list while Damon sat 10 feet away, pretending he was calm. 1. The card with my handwriting. 2. The stamp on the back. 3. The date Dad was too tired for visitors. 4. The note that said I had attempted contact. 5. Ruth Bell's torn envelope. My hand shook as I wrote, but I kept going. Each line felt like pulling a nail from a door that had been locked from the outside. Judge Cross read silently for a moment, then asked, "Counsel, is Ms. Bell present today?" Damon's lawyer stood too fast. "Your Honor, before anyone speaks about this file, we object to its use as emotional pressure." Emotional pressure. I almost laughed, but there was no humor in me. Damon had used my father's death as pressure for months. Now that the pressure had a paper trail, he wanted it called unfair. The judge's voice stayed calm. The court is reviewing whether the asset claims were made with full and honest disclosure. If this record shows communication control related to the estate, it may be relevant. Simple words, but they changed the room. Full and honest disclosure. Damon's face tightened when she said that. Not when she said my father's name. Not when she held my card. But when she spoke about honesty. That told me where the danger was for him. My lawyer pointed to another page. Mira, do you recognize this address? I leaned closer. It was Ruth Bell's office address. Under it was a list of 3 returned items. 1 card, 1 letter, 1 small package. The package made my stomach drop. I had sent my father his old watch. It was not expensive. It barely worked. But when I was little, he used to tap that watch and say, "When the hand moves, we move with it." I had mailed it because I wanted him to know I was still moving toward him, even if I was late. Damon had told me the package was delivered. The log said it was returned. I pressed my lips together until they hurt. My lawyer asked, "Did you ever see this return notice?" I shook my head once. Damon leaned toward his lawyer and whispered. I could not hear the words, but I saw the panic in the movement. His lawyer placed a hand flat on the table, like he was telling Damon to stop. That was when I understood the evidence was not just about my father's love. It was about Damon's control over every path between us. The mail, the phone, the hospital visits, the bank papers, the locked cabinet in his office. The forms, he told me, were routine. I wrote one more line on my paper. Find the cabinet records. Then the courtroom door opened behind us, and an older woman stepped inside holding a leather folder against her chest. My lawyer looked over her shoulder and whispered, "That is Ruth Bell." And for the first time, I realized the file had not finished speaking. It had only been waiting for someone who knew how to read it. Ruth Bell did not look like someone who had come to cause trouble. She looked like someone who had carried trouble for a long time and was finally allowed to set it down. She walked to the front with slow steps, the leather folder held tight against her chest. Her hair was silver, her coat was dark blue, and her face changed when she saw me. Not pity, not surprise, something worse. Recognition. Like she had known my name through paper before she ever saw my face. Judge Cross asked her to state her connection to Arthur Reed. Ruth stood straight. I was Mr. Reed's attorney for 12 years. I handled estate planning, business transfers, and later his protected family file. Damon made a sound under his breath. The judge looked at him. "Mr. Lawson, you will remain quiet unless your counsel is speaking." His jaw locked. Ruth opened her folder and placed a thin stack of papers on the table. "Your Honor, the sealed record was not created for this divorce. It was created before Mr. Reed passed. But when Mr. Lawson filed sworn asset claims that touched property and funds connected to Mr. Reed's estate, the file became relevant. Sworn asset claims. I understood only part of it, but my lawyer leaned close and whispered, "It means Damon made statements the court can compare against your father's records." That made my hands go cold. For months, Damon had acted like the papers were too confusing for me. But Ruth's explanation was simple. Damon had told the court one version. My father's file might show another. Ruth continued. The file contains dated notes, returned correspondence, an asset protection schedule, and records of attempted contact. Each item was received or kept through my office. Damon's lawyer stood. "We object to any suggestion that my client controlled family communication. Ms. Bell cannot know what happened inside the Lawson home." Ruth did not blink. "I cannot testify about their home. I can testify about what came through my office, what Mr. Reed instructed me to preserve, and what documents were signed in my presence." Signed. The word landed softly, but Damon reacted like it had teeth. His hand moved toward his lawyer's sleeve. His lawyer did not look at him. I turned my eyes back to Ruth. For the first time since the hearing began, I felt the ground under me. Not safe. Not yet, but real. Ruth looked at me once, then back at the judge. Mr. Reed believed his daughter was being isolated from him. He asked me to document every attempted contact that passed through my office. My chest tightened so hard I almost missed the next part. He also instructed me, Ruth said, not to release certain pages unless Mr. Lawson later denied knowledge of the protected assets. Damon pushed his chair back an inch. There it was again. Panic. My lawyer wrote something quickly, then slid the pad toward me. She had written, he knew. I stared at those two words until they blurred. The question was no longer whether my father had tried to reach me. Ruth had answered that. He had. The deeper question was why Damon was so afraid of pages that had not been opened yet. Ruth closed her leather folder gently. Then she looked at my lawyer and said, before this goes further, she should know something. Men like him often try to sound sorry right before they try to sound innocent. And that warning followed me out of the courtroom like a hand on my shoulder. Ruth's warning stayed with me even after the judge called for a short break. Men like him often try to sound sorry right before they try to sound innocent. I did not understand how fast that warning would prove itself. The moment we stepped into the hallway, Damon came toward me. Not quickly, not angrily, carefully. That was worse. His lawyer stayed near the courtroom door, watching us like he wanted Damon to keep quiet, but could not stop him. My lawyer moved closer to me, but I lifted one hand, slightly. I did not want her to speak yet. I wanted to hear what Damon thought would still work. He lowered his voice. Mira, this is getting out of control. I stared at him. There it was. Not I am sorry. Not I hurt you. Not I lied. This is getting out of control. He looked past me once, then back at my face. Your father was sick. You were fragile. I made choices because somebody had to keep things from breaking. I felt something inside me go still. For months, Damon had used that word against me. Fragile. It was the word he used when he told me not to read bank letters. It was the word he used when he said I could not handle hospital calls. It was the word he used when he told me my father did not want to see me. Now he was using it in a courthouse hallway, with my father's file sitting on the judge's desk behind us. You return my cards, I said. His eyes moved. Only for a second. But I saw it. I handled them, he said. There is a difference. No, I said. My voice was quiet, but it did not shake. There is not. Damon stepped closer, then stopped when my lawyer shifted her weight. He softened his face like we were back in our kitchen, and he was about to explain why I had misunderstood my own pain. I was trying to protect you from more rejection, he said. Your father was proud. He was angry. I did not want you begging him for love when he was already gone from you. That sentence should have broken me. A week earlier, it would have. But now I had seen the card. I had seen the stamp. I had heard Ruth say, my father asked her to document every attempted contact. Damon was not apologizing. He was trying to put the old wound back in my hands and make me carry it for him. I looked at his wedding ring, the one he kept rubbing in court. You told me the watch was delivered, I said. His mouth opened, then closed. I nodded once, more to myself than to him. You forgot about that part. For the first time, Damon looked angry. You are going to let strangers tear apart your father's memory because of a few old papers? My lawyer said, that is enough. But I kept my eyes on Damon. No, I said. I am going to let the record speak because you have been speaking for everyone long enough. Damon's face changed again. The softness vanished. The warning returned. You do not know what is in that file, he said. That was the first honest thing he had said all day. Because I did not know. But Ruth did. And when the break ended, I walked back into the courtroom, ready to let her submit every page Damon was afraid of. When we walked back into the courtroom, Damon did not look at me. That told me more than his words had. In the hallway, he had tried to sound sorry. He had tried to sound like the only adult in the room. But now, with Ruth Bell standing near the witness table and my father's file open in front of the judge, Damon looked like a man waiting for a door to close before everyone saw what was behind it. Judge Cross looked at Ruth. Ms. Bell, you may continue. Ruth placed the leather folder on the table and opened it with both hands. She did not rush. She did not perform. She moved like every page mattered because someone had died trusting her to keep it safe. My lawyer stood. Your Honor, we are asking that these exhibits be entered for review. Damon's lawyer rose at once. We object. These documents are being used to turn a divorce hearing into a grief hearing. The words landed hard. A grief hearing. As if my father's death was a trick. As if Damon had not used that grief first. Judge Cross looked at him. Counsel, the issue is not grief. The issue is whether Mr. Lawson's sworn asset claims match the records now before the court. Sworn asset claims. There it was again, the phrase that made Damon's face tighten. Ruth handed over the first set of pages. Returned correspondence, she said. 3 items, logged by my office, all connected to Mira Lawson, all returned before Mr. Reed's death. Then the second. Communication notes, calls attempted, messages left, contact blocked or redirected. Then the third. Asset protection schedule, prepared by Mr. Reed after concerns were raised about pressure inside the marriage. I stopped breathing for a second. Pressure inside the marriage. My father had seen it before I did. Or maybe he had seen it and I had not wanted to. Damon leaned toward his lawyer, whispering fast now. His lawyer kept his face still, but his hand moved over the pages like he wanted to cover them from the room. My lawyer touched my arm lightly. This is the first official step, she whispered. Once they are marked for review, he cannot pretend they never existed. Marked for review. The words were plain, but they felt bigger than any speech. For months, Damon had kept things small. Small lies, small warnings, small locked drawers, small excuses that made me feel foolish for asking questions. Now, the court was giving those small things names. Returned correspondence. Communication notes. Asset schedule. Possible pressure. I wrote each one down, not because I needed to remember them this time, because I wanted to see them lined up where Damon could not move them around anymore. Damon's lawyer tried again. Your Honor, my client maintains that any family communication was handled with Mrs. Lawson's emotional health in mind. My lawyer stood before I could even look at her. Then Mr. Lawson should have no concern with the court reviewing who handled it, when it was handled, and why it was connected to assets he now claims were fully disclosed. The room went still. That was the strike. Not shouting, not revenge, not even accusation. Just a clean line drawn through Damon's story. If he had protected me, the records would prove it. If he had controlled me, the records would prove that too. Judge Cross nodded once. The exhibits will be marked for review. Damon closed his eyes for half a second. I saw it. So did Ruth. So did my lawyer. And when the clerk marked the first exhibit number on my father's file, I knew something had changed. Damon could still lie. But now his lies had to stand next to documents. And from the look on his face, he knew the next fight would not happen in private. It would happen where every word could be written down. Once the exhibits were marked for review, Damon stopped trying to look like a wounded husband. He started trying to look like a respectable man under attack. That was a different kind of pressure. His lawyer stood straighter. His voice became smoother. He stopped fighting the file like it was a family matter and started shaping me into the problem. "Your Honor," he said, "we believe Mrs. Lawson's grief has affected her memory of these events. My client has been trying to protect her from stress for a long time." There it was again. Protect. Stress. Grief. The same soft words Damon had used at home were now being dressed up for court. I felt my face get hot, but I kept my eyes on the table. My lawyer had told me earlier that sometimes the first attack would not be against the proof. It would be against the person holding it. Now I understood. If Damon could not erase the cards, the logs, or the asset schedule, he would try to make me look too broken to understand them. His lawyer continued, "We also have witnesses who can speak to Mr. Lawson's role as the stable partner in the marriage." Stable partner. I almost turned toward Damon. Then, stable was not what I remembered. I remembered a man who took my phone at night and called it care. A man who opened my mail and called it help. A man who told me my father had rejected me and called it protection. But in that courtroom, words could wear clean clothes. Damon's lawyer placed a few papers on his side of the table. Friends, business contacts, and household records show that Mr. Lawson managed most financial and family matters because Mrs. Lawson was overwhelmed. My chest tightened. Household records. That meant Damon was going to use the very control he created as proof that I needed him. My lawyer leaned close. "Do not react," she whispered. "Let him build the box. Then we show who made it." I held on to that sentence. Let him build the box. For months, Damon had built one around me. So slowly, I thought it was a home. Now he was trying to bring that box into court and label it evidence. Judge Cross looked over the papers. "Counsel, the court will decide what weight, if any, these statements carry. But emotional condition does not erase document history." Document history. Those words steadied me. Because Damon could bring witnesses who saw me crying. He could bring friends who heard me say I felt confused. He could bring every person who believed he was calm and I was falling apart. But none of them had been inside the locked cabinet. None of them had seen the returned watch package. None of them had stamped unwanted contact on my card. Damon looked at me then, and for 1 second, I saw the old warning in his eyes. He wanted me embarrassed. He wanted me quiet. He wanted me to shrink before anyone asked the next question. Instead, I picked up my pen and wrote another line beneath the others. Who called me unstable first? Because the more his lawyer spoke, the more I saw the pattern. Damon had not only controlled the proof, he had prepared a story about why no one should believe me once the proof came out. And that left only one thing I needed to hear from him directly. When the judge called the next pause, I did not wait for Damon to come to me. This time, I turned toward him first. I turned toward Damon before he could decide how I was supposed to feel. For years, that had been his power. He named my emotions before I could understand them. If I was scared, he called me unstable. If I asked a question, he called me tired. If I missed my father, he called me desperate. This time, I spoke first. Who told you my contact was unwanted? Damon blinked once. It was small, but I saw it. His lawyer stepped closer. Mrs. Lawson, this is not the place for. Judge Cross raised one hand. Let her finish the question. The room went still again. I kept my voice low. That stamp was on my card. My card to my father. You told me. He refused it. So I am asking you, Damon. Who told you it was unwanted? Damon's face softened, but now I knew that softness was a tool. Mira, you are upset. No, I said. I am asking. His eyes moved toward the judge, then Ruth, then his lawyer. He was looking for the safest version of the truth. I handled things based on what I believed was best. He said, that answer did not hurt the way it once would have. It was too careful to be innocent. What you believed was best, I repeated, or what my father actually said. His jaw tightened. My father was sick, he said. He was tired. He did not need emotional pressure from you. The words hit me, but they did not knock me down. Not anymore. Because the file was open. Because Ruth was there. Because 3 returned items were marked in my father's records. Because for the first time, Damon's words were not the only thing in the room. I looked at him and said, you told me the watch was delivered. His face changed. Not much, just enough. The old watch had not been in the first card. It had been in the small package I sent 2 weeks later. If Damon only knew about the card from the file, he should have looked confused. He did not. He looked caught. My lawyer's pen stopped moving. Ruth's eyes lowered to her folder. Judge Cross leaned back slightly. Mr. Lawson, did you know about the package? Damon's lawyer answered before he could. Your Honor, my client may have been generally aware of household mail. Generally aware. That phrase made something cold and clear settle inside me. I turned to the judge, not Damon. He told me it was delivered. He told me my father kept it and still refused to call me. Damon's voice sharpened. Because you were falling apart, Mira. You could not handle the truth. I almost smiled then, but it was not happiness. It was the shock of finally hearing him say the quiet part out loud. The truth was something he thought I could not handle. So he had handled it for me. My lawyer stood. Your Honor, this goes directly to the pattern we are asking the court to review. Mr. Lawson is not only saying he handled mail. He is claiming the right to decide what truth reached my client. Damon looked at me then, and the anger in his eyes was no longer hidden. You think these papers will save you, he said. I held his stare. No, I said. I think they already saved the part of me you kept trying to bury. No one spoke after that. Then Ruth opened her folder again and pulled out a page with hospital letterhead at the top. My stomach tightened before she said a word. Because if the returned cards proved Damon had touched the mail, the hospital records were about to show what he had done with time itself. The hospital letterhead looked plain. Just a name, a date, a patient number, a small logo in the corner. But Damon stared at it like Ruth had placed a blade on the table. My father had spent his last months in and out of that hospital. I knew the building. I knew the smell of the hallway soap. I knew the awful little chairs beside the beds. What I did not know was why Ruth Bell had a hospital record inside an attorney-held file. Judge Cross looked at the page. Ms. Bell, explain what this is. Ruth nodded. Visitor access notes and contact records. Mr. Reed authorized my office to request and preserve copies after he became concerned that his daughter was not receiving messages. Damon's lawyer stood. Your Honor, hospital notes can be incomplete. They should not be treated as proof of intent. Proof of intent. That phrase sounded careful. Too careful. My lawyer answered. We are not asking the court to read minds. We are asking the court to compare dates. Compare dates. Ruth placed another page beside the first one. One column showed hospital calls. One column showed returned mail. One column showed notes from Ruth's office. And then there was a fourth column. Household contact relayed by Damon Lawson. My mouth went dry. Ruth pointed to the first date. On this morning, Mr. Reed asked that his daughter be told he was awake and willing to see her. I remembered that morning. Damon had brought me tea in bed and said, "Your father had a bad night. He needs rest. Do not make this about you." Ruth pointed to the second date. That same day, Ms. Lawson's card was returned to my office with the handling note already attached. Unwanted contact. The words hit me again, but this time they were not alone. They had a date standing beside them. Ruth moved to the next line. 2 days later, Mr. Reed asked whether his daughter had received his message. I looked down at my hands. I had received nothing. Damon shifted in his chair. I was trying to protect everyone, he said. Judge Cross looked at him. "Mr. Lawson, your counsel will speak for you." But the damage was already done. Trying to protect everyone was different from I did not know. It was different from I only handled household mail. It was a new story because the old one was running out of room. My lawyer heard it too. She wrote one word on her pad and turned it toward me. Shift. Damon was shifting. From denial to protection. From mistake to excuse. From I took everything to I had a reason. The stack of pages grew by only a few sheets, but the room felt smaller with each one. The returned card was not floating alone anymore. The watch package was not just a painful memory. The phone calls were not just mischances. The hospital notes, mail logs, attorney records, and Damon's own relayed messages were starting to fit together. Not perfectly. Not fully. But enough to show a shape. A shape with Damon, standing in the middle of every path between my father and me. Ruth turned one more page, then stopped. Her face changed. Not like a lawyer finding a stronger record. Like a person holding something she wished she could have handed me years ago. "There is one more exhibit Mr. Reed asked me to preserve," she said quietly. He said if Mira ever believed he stopped loving her, this page should be read before anything else. My chest tightened. Damon whispered, "No." And that single word told me the next page was not about property at all. Damon's whisper was small, but it reached me. No. That one word made the page feel heavier before Ruth even lifted it. Judge Cross looked at Damon, then at his lawyer. "Control your client." Damon's lawyer put a hand on Damon's arm, but Damon did not look at him. He was staring at the paper in Ruth's hand, like it had a voice. Ruth turned toward the judge. "This is a notarized letter from Arthur Reed. It was signed 6 weeks before his death and held in my office under his instruction." My father's letter. The room blurred for a second. I had spent months thinking my father had died angry with me. I had replayed every missed call, every argument, every family dinner where Damon smiled too hard and Dad stayed too quiet. I had told myself I deserved the silence because I had chosen my marriage over the man who raised me. Ruth began to read. "My Mira," she said. 2 words. That was all it took. My hand went to my mouth, but I did not make a sound. Not Ms. Lawson, not my daughter, not a cold legal line. My Mira. Ruth's voice softened, but it stayed steady. "If this letter is being read, then someone has made you believe I stopped loving you. I need you to know that is not true." The air left my body. I heard a chair move, maybe Damon's, maybe someone behind me. I did not turn. I could not take my eyes off that paper. Ruth continued, I have tried to reach you through calls, letters, and messages. I do not know which ones you received. I have reason to believe some contact has been blocked, delayed, or returned. Blocked. Delayed. Returned. The words did not feel like guesses anymore. They felt like my father had been standing on the other side of a locked door, knocking while I cried inside the house. Ruth paused once, then read the next line. If Damon tells you I rejected you, ask who carried the message. Damon said, This is ridiculous. His lawyer whispered, Stop. But the judge heard him. Mr. Lawson, she said, one more interruption and I will address it on the record. On the record. That made Damon go still. Ruth kept reading. I am worried he is using your grief to make you easier to control. I am worried he is calling his control protection. I am worried that by the time you see this, he will have taken more than money from you. My eyes burned. Because my father had known. Not everything. Not every small cruelty. Not every night Damon told me I was too emotional to understand paperwork. But enough. He had seen the shape of it before I could name it. Ruth's voice broke slightly on the last part. You were never unwanted. Not by me. Not for one day. If my silence hurt you, please know this. Silence was never what I chose. I closed my eyes. For months, Damon had made my father's death feel like a locked room with me outside it. But my father had left a key. Not to the house. Not to the money. To the truth. When I opened my eyes, Damon was no longer looking at me. He was looking at the file tabs beside Ruth's hand. One tab remained under the letter. It was marked with a single word. Acknowledgement. My lawyer saw it at the same time I did. And suddenly the question was not only whether my father had known Damon was keeping us apart. The question was whether Damon had known my father knew. Acknowledgement. That word sat on the file tab like a door handle. Ruth looked at Judge Cross before she touched it. Your Honor, this is the document Mr. Reed instructed me to keep sealed unless Mr. Lawson denied knowledge of the protected assets or denied knowing Mr. Reed was trying to reach his daughter. Damon's lawyer stood halfway. We object until we see the document. You will, the judge said. Sit down. For the first time, Damon did not whisper. He did not move. He just stared at Ruth's hand. Ruth opened the tab and pulled out one page. It was not long. That made it worse. A person could hide inside a long document. A short one gave no room. My lawyer leaned closer. Mira, breathe. I had not realized I was holding my breath. Ruth handed the page to the clerk first. The clerk marked it. Then copies went to both tables. My lawyer slid ours in front of me. At the top, it said, Meeting Acknowledgement. Below that were three names. Arthur Reed. Ruth Bell. Damon Lawson. My vision blurred when I saw Damon's signature at the bottom. Not typed, not stamped, signed. Judge Cross read silently. The room waited with her. Then she looked at Damon. Mr. Lawson, is this your signature? Damon's lawyer rose. Your Honor, my client would need time to review. The judge did not raise her voice. Is this his signature? Damon swallowed. It appears to be. Appears. Even now, he could not say yes. Ruth's voice stayed calm. I witnessed that signature myself. The judge looked back down. The acknowledgement states that Mr. Lawson was informed Arthur Reed had created an asset protection schedule for Mira Lawson's benefit. It also states that Mr. Reed wished to resume direct contact with his daughter and requested that no family communication be blocked, returned, or represented as unwanted without his written instruction. The words went through me one at a time. No communication blocked. No communication returned. No communication represented as unwanted, without written instruction. Damon had not misunderstood. He had not guessed. He had signed a paper saying he knew. My lawyer turned one page. Your Honor, the signature date is 3 weeks before the returned card. Judge Cross looked at Damon again. That was the moment the whole room changed. Before that page, Damon could still hide behind grief. He could say he was protecting me. He could say my father was tired, angry, proud, too sick, too distant. He could say the mail was confusing. He could say the court was turning pain into a weapon. But this page cut through all of it. Damon knew my father wanted contact. Damon knew my father had protected assets for me. Damon knew the card should never have been marked unwanted unless my father said so in writing. And still, the card came back. Still, the watch package came back. Still, Damon told me my father had rejected me. Judge Cross placed the page flat on her desk. This directly contradicts Mr. Lawson's explanation. Damon's lawyer went quiet. Damon finally looked at me. For years, he had looked at me like I was someone he could guide back into confusion. But there was nowhere to guide me now. The paper was between us. The signature was his. The date was there. Ruth had witnessed it. The clerk had marked it. My father's truth was no longer trapped inside a sealed file. It was in the court record. Damon's face hardened. I did what I had to do. My lawyer stood. Your Honor, we ask that Mr. Lawson's sworn asset statements be reviewed in light of this exhibit and the related communication records. Judge Cross nodded. The court will consider the full record. Full record. Not Damon's version. Not my grief. Not the story he built around me. The record. And as the judge ordered the exhibit added beside the others, I understood what Damon had really lost in that moment. Not everything. Not yet. But the one thing he had used to take everything from me. Control of the truth. Control of the truth. That was what Damon had lost first. And once he lost that, everything else started falling in order. My lawyer did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She stood with my father's file open in front of her and said, Your Honor, based on the signed acknowledgement, the returned correspondence, the hospital contact records, and the asset protection schedule, we ask the court to preserve all disputed accounts and records connected to Arthur Reed's estate until full review is complete. Damon's head snapped toward her. Preserve. That word frightened him more than accuse. Because preserve meant he could not move things around before anyone looked closer. Preserve meant no quiet transfer, no missing folder, no sudden mistake, no story changing after the hearing. His lawyer stood. Your Honor, that is unnecessary. My client has complied with disclosure. Judge Cross looked at the signed acknowledgement again. The record before me raises serious questions about that statement. Damon's face went pale. Not angry, pale. For the first time, the court was not treating him like the organized husband and me like the grieving wife. The court was treating him like a man whose sworn words did not match his own signature. My lawyer continued, We also request production of all household financial files, estate-related mail, account access records, and any documents kept in Mr. Lawson's locked home office cabinet. The locked cabinet. My breath stopped for half a second. Damon turned toward me, and I saw the old warning try to rise in his face. But it had nowhere to go. Not with the judge watching. Not with Ruth Bell sitting there. Not with his signature already marked as an exhibit. Judge Cross nodded slowly. The request is granted in part. The disputed records and accounts connected to the Reed estate schedule are to be preserved. Mr. Lawson is ordered to produce the listed documents through counsel. No transfer, removal, destruction, or change of those records is permitted. Damon whispered, "This will ruin me." The room heard it. His lawyer closed his eyes. That was the second piece of karma. Damon had spent months telling everyone he was protecting me, but the moment the court protected the records, he did not say, "This is unfair to her." He did not say, "I did nothing wrong." He said it would ruin him. Judge Cross looked up. "Mr. Lawson, I suggest you choose your words carefully." He sat back like the chair had turned cold under him. Then the social part began. It was small at first. A woman sitting near the back, someone from Damon's office, lowered her phone from her ear and stared at him. One of the men who had walked in with him before the hearing would not meet his eyes. Even his lawyer stopped, leaning close to whisper. He kept a professional distance, like Damon had become a fire no one wanted to stand too near. Damon noticed. I could tell because his shoulders changed. He had always cared about how a room saw him. That was why he stayed calm in public. That was why he made me look emotional. That was why he called control protection. Now the room had seen the paper. The money part came next. My lawyer showed the asset protection schedule. Ruth confirmed it had been prepared before Dad died. The judge did not award everything that day, and she did not pretend the case was finished. But she made one thing clear. Damon's claim that he had full control over those disputed assets would not be accepted without review. His victory stopped being a victory. His "I took everything" became evidence against him. The same court where he had tried to humiliate me now ordered him to protect the records he wanted buried. And as the clerk gathered the marked exhibits, I watched Damon stare at my father's file like it had betrayed him. But the file had not betrayed him. It had simply remembered what he thought everyone else would forget. The karma was not loud. It was official. Damon had taken my voice, my mail, my trust, my last goodbye, and tried to take my future. Now the court had taken the one thing he needed most. The power to hide what he had done. And when the judge ended the hearing, I did not feel healed yet. I only felt the door open. The truth was safe enough to stand without me holding it up. Now I had to learn who I was without Damon's lie sitting on my chest. After the hearing, I did not feel like a winner. Not right away. Winning sounded loud. It sounded like smiling for people, walking out with your head high, and knowing exactly what came next. I did not have that yet. What I had was quieter. The court had ordered the records preserved. Damon had to produce the files from his locked cabinet through his lawyer. The disputed accounts tied to my father's estate could not be moved while the review continued. Ruth kept certified copies of every marked exhibit. The legal fight was not over. But the lie was no longer living alone inside me. That night, I sat at the small kitchen table in the apartment I had rented after leaving Damon. The table had one weak leg and a water stain near the corner. It was not the home I had imagined for myself. But for the first time in months, every key on that table belonged to me. My phone sat beside a cup of tea. No one took it to protect me. No one checked my messages first. No one told me which truth I was strong enough to hear. Ruth had given me a copy of my father's letter before I left court. I read the first line again. My Mira. I placed the page flat on the table and put my father's old watch beside it. The watch had been returned, logged, hidden, and turned into proof. But that night, I did not look at it like evidence. I touched the cracked leather band and remembered my father tapping it when I was little. When the hand moves, we move with it. For so long, Damon had made me believe time had stopped on the day my father died angry with me. But time had not stopped. It had been held back from me. Now, it started moving again. Damon still existed. The case still existed. The damage still existed. But he was no longer the center of the room inside my chest. My father's love was. So let me ask you something. If someone steals your last goodbye, and the truth finally reaches the record, is quiet justice enough? Or should every hidden wound be spoken out loud? I used to think justice had to look like revenge to feel real. Now, I think sometimes justice is simply the moment you stop carrying a lie that was never yours. If stories like this remind you that truth can still find its way home, please subscribe and stay with me for the next one. I folded my father's letter carefully and placed it in the top drawer of the table. Not in a court file. Not under Damon's name. Not beside records that proved pain. Just in my drawer, in my home, where I could reach it whenever I needed to remember. Damon had said he took everything. But he never took that. He never took the love my father wrote down, witnessed, saved, and sent back to me when I needed it most.